Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. Today I'm going to do a little bit of a video on a subject a client asked me to make something on, which is the subject of, is having multiple residencies a good or a bad thing? So we're going to dive into examining that. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. Really appreciate your support. Hit the notification bell, make sure you don't miss out on any of the videos. And welcome. If you have any questions about international structuring, either for your business or for yourself personally, you're looking at relocating, you want to pay lower taxes, you want to structure your business to pay lower taxes, you want to get residencies, citizenships, open bank accounts, open companies, etc., please reach out to me. You can book a call, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer, link in the description below, or check out our websites, offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com. Send us a message through there. Okay, let's dive in. So you can have multiple residency permits, which might be different than having multiple tax residencies. And you can also have multiple tax residencies. So let's use just a quick little example. So most countries in the world, not all, but most, would consider you to be tax resident there if you spend over 183 days. Often countries will also claim that you're tax resident there if you have basically like your center of life, your permanent home based there. Obviously, in the case of the US, if you're a US citizen or green card holder, then you're considered tax resident regardless. And under the substantial presence test, you could spend less time. Australia is talking about introducing some really crazy draconian rules around determining tax residency that would potentially restrict certain people from spending more than 45 days in Australia without being tax resident there. So bottom line is, it would be easy, if you planned it right, to overlap with 2 or maybe even 3 of these different countries. So you could be multiple tax resident. And generally speaking, being multiple tax residents is a terrible idea, okay? Unless they're zero tax countries or something, you do not want to be multiple tax resident. That being said, you can maintain residency permits in a lot of places relatively easy. You have places like Bulgaria, essentially no minimum stay requirements. Georgia, you can get away with, again, very low stay requirements. Panama, Panama's changing the Spanish Nations visa program. I'll maybe do a video about that soon. So that's another one. UAE, you can visit once every 6 months, or 180 days to be precise. Lots of different examples. Some of them, Cyprus, okay, 60 days a year, or in some cases, 1 visit every 2 years, depending on the residency permit. Lots of examples, right? And so should you do that? Is it an advantage to have multiple of these, or is it a disadvantage? So I think this is partially a function of disclosure and what it is you're trying to do. In my opinion, generally, you're better off to have multiple residencies available to you. Why is this? Well, I mean, you can see what happened in the last year, right? Your freedom of travel, your ability to move from one place to another, was to some extent a function of your passport and your residency permits. And so if you had especially permanent residence in a place, but a residency permit in general, you could potentially go to that country, whereas normally you couldn't. And if you had a passport, then often you could go there. You had some crazy countries like Australia that didn't even really want to let their own citizens in. So, there was some little bit weird places, which makes you wonder, what's really the benefit of that citizenship? Is your country really taking care of you? Doesn't really seem like it to me, but hey. What about in terms of things like banking, etc.? This is where disclosure comes in. If you're in a situation where you have multiple residencies, the advantage of this is there are certain cases where you can pick and choose which one is useful to you, okay? You could say, hey, listen, for the purposes of this, I'm going to tell you about this residency. For the purposes of something else, I'm going to tell you about this residency, and so on and so forth. That's super useful. That's fantastic, okay? The downside is there are certain cases, and I'll give you a specific example. I have a close friend and client who has lived in Bulgaria for a number of years, ended up visiting Panama, loved it, decided he wants to go live there, get a residency there, gets a residency permit, etc., calls his accountant in Estonia, says, hey, I'm shifting my residency here, and they're like, whoa, Panama, we can't do business with you. What? He calls the next one. They say, no, we can't. Nobody in Estonia wants to do business with him because of Panama, okay? That's where I say it's a function to some extent of disclosure. Right now, it's possible that comes out. It's like, this information, I don't know, somehow gets out there, and that causes you problems. Most of the time, that's not going to be the case. Most of the time, the reality is that, say, a bank or something like that has better things to do than to worry about you, okay? It's just, they're going to care about your transactions, they're going to care about your website, they're going to care about the nature of your business. but tracking you around the world and verifying every little thing, probably not that big a thing for them. That being said, that's why there is the positive side. Okay, so what are some of the positives of having these multiple residencies? A few things. Number one, I did a video the other day on criminal records, right? It's like, okay, if you start a process and then something happens, some uncertainty in the future, maybe you no longer have that option available to you, but you've already got it, so you're good. Imagine you were somebody who wanted to apply for MM2H in Malaysia, great program, etc. Not available anymore. If you'd applied for it 2 years ago, you'd have it now. Okay, you've got it. It's good for 10 years, not like they canceled them, etc. for the people who had it, so that's great, right? You took advantage of that opportunity while it was available to you. Additionally, sometimes you're starting yourself down a path towards something like permanent residency. So let's use, for example, Bulgaria, okay? If you are willing to go and get a Bulgarian residency, after 5 years, it becomes permanent. A temporary residency becomes permanent residency. So that's then a long-term asset for you, right? This is true in a bunch of different countries. And then you also get, like I said, the ability to pick and choose other options. If you're, say you want to travel or you want to easily move, it makes you more flexible, more able. So I'm increasingly a big fan. I was not such an advocate of this back, I don't know, a few years ago. It didn't seem so purposeful to me. But the more time I spend and the more things change and the more kind of rules tighten up, the more I'm a huge, huge fan that if you have the option, you should definitely get multiple residencies and you should maintain them. For the cost, like say you're going to get residency in a bunch of these countries, it's a few $1,000s, right? Maybe it costs you a few $1,000s to maintain. You have to visit there, once a year or something like that. If you can do something where it doesn't really require much to maintain, it doesn't really require much to get it, I think it's worth it. So that's my opinion. If you're thinking you're just going to spend all your life in one country, okay, maybe that's a little bit different. You're probably not watching this channel if that's the case, but you never know. And so yeah, that would be my advice. My advice would be if it's very low cost, both in terms of time and in terms of money, then it is almost always beneficial to have multiple residencies. There is that possible concern, depending on which country it is, that you could cause some issue, but very, very rare, usually a function of disclosure, probably doesn't affect you. And so the optionality to me far outweighs the downside. Hope that helps. If you have any questions about it, put it in the comments below. If you want to reach out and get specific advice for you, please book a call with me, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. Again, link in the description below. If you haven't already, please give it a thumbs up. Send it to your friends, hit the subscribe button, all those sorts of things that really help me on this channel. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to look forward to seeing you guys on the next video.